afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the discussion, Architecture for Good, Can Transformation be Designed? In an era of rapid change and increasing challenges, architecture is proving to be a powerful tool, not just for building structures, but for building communities and addressing some of the most pressing issues of our time. From promoting sustainability and tackling inequality to enhancing accessibility, the role of architecture is expanding beyond aesthetics and functionality. It is evolving into a force for social good. The activist component of architecture was brought into focus in recent editions of the Architectural Biennale. For instance, in 2021, Hashim Sarkis curated How Will We Live Together?, which addressed some important social questions and inequalities. In 2023, Leslie Loco's The Laboratory of the Future continued this dialogue, exploring significant social issues. Similarly, the Pritzker Prize recognizes architects who prioritize social equality, sustainability, and accessibility, promoting a broader understanding of architecture's role in addressing global challenges and enhancing community well-being. And today, we have the privilege of having with us those who are at the forefront of this paradigmatic shift. To my right is Manuela Lucá-Dazio, who is the executive director of the Pritzker Prize, which since 1979 has been celebrating architectural excellence. The evolution of this award mirrors the shifting landscape of architecture itself, highlighting projects and individuals that embody these progressive values. Manuela was also for many years the creative and visionary force behind the Biennale di Venezia, where she held the position of the managing director of the Art and Architecture Department, and before that was responsible for organizing and production of both art and architectural biennales. Joining our discussion are also visionary practitioners who are redefining the purpose of architecture through innovative and impactful work. Lina Ghotmeh is an architect renowned for her socially engaged and environmentally conscious designs. She is the founder of Lina Ghotmeh Architecture based in Paris. Lina's notable projects include the Estonian National Museum, the Stone Garden Tower in Beirut, the Serpentine Pavilion 2023 in London, and the upcoming Al Ula Contemporary Art Museum in Saudi Arabia. And finally, we have Joep van Lieshout, I hope I'm pronouncing that semi-correctly, who is a celebrated visual artist and sculptor known for his provocative and boundary-pushing works. He founded the Atelier van Lieshout in Rotterdam, which produces work that spans art, design, and architecture. Joep's projects, such as the AVL Ville, a free state and an art installation, challenge conventional norms and offer unique perspectives on both communal living and space utilization. His latest real estate development project, Brutus, promises to bring a new approach serving the community through architecture. Help me welcome our panelists for today. So I will begin in order as we started and ask Manuela about the changing priorities of the Pritzker Prize. Since this is a prize which has been given since 1979, how have the priorities, the qualifications for becoming a Pritzker Prize laureate changed since then? Particularly regarding social and environmental impact of architecture. And if I may have a clicker? Yes.
Well, thank you, Jelena, and thank you for having me here at the Art for Tomorrow's program. To answer your question, the mission of the Pritzker Prize has not changed since 1979 when it was established by J. and Cindy Pritzker in Chicago. The Pritzker stayed faithful to its mission, which is to acknowledge a living architect or architects for a body of built work that has produced consistent and continuous contributions to humanity and the built environment through the art of architecture. So here are the two parameters that haven't changed since then. Contributions to humanity and the built environment and the art of architecture. And this has been, and it still is, the mission of the Pritzker Prize. So it has, of course, been interpreted in different ways from the different juries that have succeeded throughout the decades. And here behind me you have a portrait of the current jury, and also through the work of the different laureates that have been appointed. But in the end, it has always been about coming with the ultimate acknowledgement for an architect to be a catalyst of the present, but also as a great responsibility for the architect to influence the profession and the discipline for the future. So these two dimensions are always together. And in a way, I think if the mission hasn't changed, I think our world has deeply changed in this past 45 years, and especially now. I mean, we live in recently, our world has been halted suddenly, regardless of any geography, and we live a time of deep shape shifting in a way. So we can see everywhere ongoing conflicts, deep inequalities, and issues like decolonization, decarbonization, environmental justice, gender equity. These are all part of our daily vocabulary as individuals and professionals, not just as architects. So it is, in a way, if architecture is a hybrid discipline, I think now it should even go, it's required to go even beyond hybridity. And with architecture, the role, I think, of the Pritzker Prize is to not only to represent all this, but also to show paths to address these issues. What I'm trying as director of the prize and the whole jury with me to do right now is also to enlarge the conversation, since the Pritzker Prize has the power to involve a global community in this discussion. I think it's more and more important to involve a wider community that goes even beyond the architecture community. So we can decide to spend our life without art or dance or theater if we don't like them, but we can't ignore architecture because we live in architecture, we use architecture every day. And so I think it's the most important thing through the decisions of the jury and through the work of the laureates to also show that, you know, architects need clients, and we are the clients. So it's up to us, it's our responsibility and privilege to set the demand and to support the architects to create even bigger benefits to humanity and the built environment.
Thank you. I will ask the practicing architect then a question. Your work often involves transforming and regenerating urban spaces or remote areas. Could you discuss some projects where you successfully transformed an urban area, and what were these key elements that contributed to its success? And I can give you this clicker. You can click through your slides here to illustrate the point.
Yeah. Thank you, Manuela, to open this conversation actually about architecture and society, and how can we dialogue actually and build more partnerships, because as architects we're not the only vessels in defending our urban environment or built environment. We need those partnerships actually to create and manifest our vision. And it's really a privilege, actually, to be an architect too, because somehow we are always at the crossroads of many disciplines, and we are about building in space a conversation about history, about a certain time and in space and time, and be able to project that present in the future. And it's true that throughout my practice, I always found myself working on territories that are very sensitive, that have lived troubled events. I mean, I grew up in Beirut during the wartime. I lived that city that has been constantly rebuilt and destroyed. And somehow one of the first projects that I worked on is this Estonian National Museum. And it's a building that Estonia wanted to build once they joined the European Union. So they were under Soviet occupation until 91. And for them, this museum was about constructing their identity or even reconstructing the identity. And more particularly, when we're talking about the urban environment, the site on which this building was to be developed is one of the largest military airfields that were in the region, in the Baltic state, and it was a Soviet airfield. So it was a dilemma. How do you actually make an architecture play an urban role? And instead of just being an icon or like a kind of a signature architecture, allow it to be to live with that airfield and somehow transform that territory into a territory for people. And by doing that, actually, the building was also about opening the identity, opening national identity, and thinking that actually identity is not a closed thing. We're constantly changing as individuals. And maybe architecture can be a vessel about this hybridization and diversity of identity, the identities that actually we contain as individuals. So in that sense, this architecture was able to open that conversation. It was debated, and it was really allowing that that question to be part of the population at that time. Another project about urban regeneration is the question of industries. You know, industrial architecture is very much present in our buildscape, and always they are present in pristine landscapes, really beautiful natures, and we end up with these metal boxes that really destroy nature. And when I was faced to do this manufacturing building, and here it's for Hermès, I thought, why should actually a manufacturing building look like a metal box and destroy its natural landscape? So we started thinking, and that's also about partnership, because my client here wanted to push the boundary of how a manufacturing building looks. We started thinking how to regenerate that land, and I thought about the building really talking about the nature that surrounds it. And it was also a point to push manufacturing facilities to be very low carbon and energy positive constructions. So this is the first energy positive low carbon construction in France, and trying to work with an ecosystem, with building with bricks, locally sourced with the earth of the site. Also creating an ecosystem where you have nature part of this building, and also you can have bees and really be close to nature in the way we build. So that's a way also of thinking about not only the urban environment, the dense urban environment, but also about this kind of larger buildscape that we constantly form and build. Beirut is a city that is constantly also built and destroyed and rebuilt, as we know. And here, like, how do you build a residential building within that city, and if residential construction can give something back to the city as a museum does. We're always used that museums are the ones that are trying to give beauty to a city or to a place, but maybe housing has also that responsibility of giving sensitivity and bringing beauty back to the urban environment. So this is more like briefly 3 projects that we just delivered with my atelier, and that portray that question of urban regeneration, but also beyond the urban. If I can put it this way.
Thank you. Thank you for covering all these important topics. First, Manuela sets the stage for the priorities of architecture today, but also you bring in all these other elements that are working hand in hand to create the space for the people. And we will talk more about these other aspects, such as sustainability and working with local communities as well. I would like to now ask Joep to present his project, because it's also an interesting example, like yours, of bringing together many elements. In his case, it's very much focusing on that nexus between art and architecture. Maybe you can... Since I don't know which slides you would like to show, but you can tell us about Brutus, and when you talk about it, you talk about architecture for the people.
Yes.
So please tell us, what is the architecture for the people? Is other architecture not for the people? Or you mean something specific by it? And where is the model for other architects to also work for the people?
Thank you. In 2001, when I started the Free State of AVLville, which was an amazing project, but it was closed after 1 year by everyone, and then I discovered it's not my own land, and that's why they kicked me out. So in 2008, I bought some land in the harbor of Rotterdam, in the worst areas where nobody wanted to have real estate. So I bought 11,000 square meters of land for almost nothing. I started thinking about to create a new world, the AVL, the world of AVL, and because I really believe in art as a connection to the people, to the society, to transforms. I also really like museums and art institutions, but at the same time, I see that the museums and art institutions, they become super professional. Super expensive. The space they have is very limited. The commercial side of the museums becomes super important. That actually they don't play the role in for contemporary art anymore. Well, maybe for a very select group of very successful artists, but I believe the art world is much bigger than this top of the pyramid. So that's why I created an art center that is now called Brutus. We have around 10,000 square meters of space, which are mainly exhibition spaces, where we put the artist central. So it's all giving space and opportunities for artists to dream big, to create big, because we have a lot of space and there is no limitation. So if you want to take away a wall, it's fine. If you do a very naughty exhibition or undesired exhibition, you're welcome. So there is no filter. And the buildings that we have are very, very bad, and they're all leaking, they're falling apart. And I thought, let's think big. Let's make it really big and make it really successful. We're going to make a super big development. I found myself a partner, Powerhouse company. This is an architect studio, and we became partners to develop the Brutus project. That consists of an art center of 10,000 square meters, surrounded by 3 housing blocks, which have 550 apartments. So with the money that is being made of the apartments, the whole museum is being paid, the construction, but also we'll make an endowment fund, meaning money in the future will go to the museum to program it and to become independent and don't have the same problem that the museums have now.
So it's a way of sustainable funding. Your sustainability is very much fiscal sustainability, right?
Yeah. We create not a building, but a machine actually to keep on programming art. And so what we really believe is like a lot of real estate developers, they invent a project and then they sell it and they are out. So now we decided, no, we are going to keep the building. It's very difficult to keep the building financially, but like that it makes sense to use very good materials, very good technology, to create a society, like a community in the buildings that, people are proud to live there and they keep on living there. We as owners keep the building in pristine condition. So it will become, let's say, a very sustainable building, not only because of all the technical things like solar and carbon dioxide and heating and such like that, but more in the durability of the building. So we are now, maybe some other slide. Oh, yeah.
Who are the people who are going to live there? Whom is it intended for?
Well, we want to make 30% social housing, so the subsidized housing, then I think 30% low and middle income, and then there's a part that is more expensive. I really like to make the social housing into artist studios, so they can live and work for very low cost in that building. We want to experiment also with different forms of living together, like group communications and
So it's going to be the first gentrified neighborhood where the artists don't move out.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you see that always, that, artists are in some poor area, and then the coffee shops come, and then the real estate developers come, and the artists disappear. And I saw that very early on, and that's why I said, okay, this is not going to happen to us. So we create this incredible art center that will keep, as long as the building exists, will be able to program exhibitions, mainly of other artists, about 80%, and the other 20% I will start building a huge installation that is so big that it can only be built on that location. So to create a very intense artwork. So,
may I just ask you, do you see this as a model that can be replicated, that can be used by others?
I think so, and I think this is like the really important message that I have, that I also share with my partner, Nana de Rue. He says, as an architect, you work for a developer that is going to tell you you have to do like this, and then, no, you cannot do this because it's complicated, it's too expensive, or it's like this and this. So at the end, the architect has a big dream, then the dream becomes smaller and smaller, then the project developer is going to get all the money, and the architect gets a little bit. And then there's also the construction company that also can, really make the quality of the building less and less. So that's why I think it's really important to be, as an architect, to be on top of the pyramid, to become a developer, or at least have an influence on the development. Like that, you can choose for higher quality, you can choose for more creative designs. You can, with the money, with real estate development, there's a lot of money involved. With that money, you can also do good things. I decided to make an art center, but someone else can make a school, or a social center, or a park, or a lake, or something else. So I think that is really important. And I think the cities that have the land, they should take this responsibility. They should say, okay, this is a piece of land, we want to have a development there. Let's see who can do it, and maybe also give it to creative people, or people with a social agenda. And they should do that, not in a small scale, like here you can have a little corner with some studios. No, it should be big as possible, because if it's big, there is less risk and more profit and more result.
Thank you. Sounds fascinating. I wonder, Manuela, if you could maybe bring up some examples from the Pritzker Prize laureates where the projects have made an impact, a huge difference to society, to community. Who from the Pritzker Prize laureates has invested their focus into creating a different space or spaces for the public good?
In many different ways, all of them. And here, well, if you think of these two parameters, the benefits to humanity and the built environment and the art of architecture, they're always present and never excluding each other in the long series of architects who got the Pritzker Prize from 79 until now. And you can see, especially more recently, a number of groundbreaking practices next to way more established ones, but recently more and more it is going towards this dimension. So for example, if we take just the 4 past laureate, which is from 2021, which is when I started with the prize, and you look at the work of Riken Yamamoto, David Chipperfield, going backward, Francis Queret, and Lacaton and Vassal, here I picked just one example, just 4 pills, one for each of them, but they represent very well their philosophy, their practice, and their attitude towards all these themes through different lenses. You can have, for example, Riken Yamamoto, all of his working life and personal attitude is around community. So one fundamental element in his architecture is the threshold, always this very thin and sometimes invisible border between the public and the private spheres, which is what he makes always present in all type of architecture, be it a private house or a public building. In the fire station, for instance, in Hiroshima, he created this completely transparent building where you, as a citizen, you can see what the fire police is doing. You can see the activities, the physical activities. So a profession, that of the fireman, who is based on very precise rules and procedures, is all of a sudden made completely visible for the citizens to see what they do, how they train every day, what do they do when there is an alarm, and basically how the whole process, the whole interaction happens between the citizen and the public servant in a way. So in the case of David Chipperfield, this happens rather through culture. I'm sure you almost all of you visited the James Simon Gallery and the whole area around the Noise Museum. So the way he created the entrance is, again, David has always a very important priority and focus on the public dimension, on the common ground. And so what he created is a common space for people just passing by. You can cross the area from outside, just walking on the sideway, or you can cross it from inside. And this way you can decide to visit the museum or not. There's a beautiful cafe, there's a wonderful terrace, you can enjoy the whole context. So this is a way to connect people and to always create community around the culture, the tradition, the heritage of specific areas of the cities. In the case of Francis Queret, this is very personal and very special story. Francis, the public school in Gando comes from his experience as a child. And when to go to school from his village, Gando, to the first school that was reachable, he had to spend like hours biking under the sun and in the heat of Burkina Faso to be in this quite uncomfortable place with other children. And so when he moved to Germany and he became an architect, with the first money he got, his own money, he decided to invest them and build a public school in his own village. So he went back.
He's kind of like Joep.
Exactly.
Using his own resources for public good.
Exactly, but on a much smaller scale than you. And so you can see there in the image, you can see the people from Gando physically building with their own traditional building techniques the first school of the village. So, and in the case of Lacaton and Vassal, there is this famous now building, Tour Bois-le-Prêtre in Paris, where they were supposed to demolish, to tear down this building, and rather than displacing the families from their sort of beloved houses, they decided simply to keep the existing building and add all around another layer of space. So enlarging the existing apartments, making them better for the people to live in. So each one in their own way, they did it in a sustainable way. So we could say that basically, I think sustainability is nothing but the very rigorous use of common sense, in a way, the way to be pertinent in the use of the tools you have in your toolbox as an architect. You can say it even better than me. And this is what they're all doing, creating community, and I think even more important, bridging communities.
Yes, I think these are perfect 4 examples that kind of summarize all these aspects of current architecture that are at the forefront of architects' thoughts. And the word that you keep using and that is coming up and is, of course, part of this discussion is the community. So how does an architect involve the community? How do you do it in your projects?
I think like one of the primal thing when we're architects is building for the community at first thought. I mean, when we're doing projects, we're always thinking how these projects will live with their community, how can they foster relationship, how do they talk about history of territories. Like the Estonian National Museum was about actually a history of a community of Estonia who lived the war, where also the site was the place where a lot of manifestation had happened for independence. People used to riot coming from the city center up into the site of that land where the museum had erected. And the question here, how can architecture also be able sometimes to disappear, to become a ground, a platform for a community and for people to like to manifest, to express themselves, and to also be an open platform. One of the photos that we've seen in the beginning is this, airfield that is invaded by people, and this is where actually all of the Estonians really used that airfield to make a big concert and to meet in that place. But it's also about creating spaces that sometimes the client does not ask for. It's going beyond actually the brief, the program, and becoming also vessels for new spaces that become actually the ones that are of encounter. For example, for this museum, I always defended that it's not about just an exhibition space or a boutique or or a conference space. It's about all those in-between spaces that become generous spaces and where the unpreviewed, the uncertain can happen. And although during the process the client didn't want those, they were wondering, like, why would we build those spaces? It cost us more. We want to make the project more efficient, smaller. Actually, it ended up that those spaces are the ones where identity, where culture is happening, and where they do their concerts and they use those open spaces. But it's also about like like the responsibility as architects, like being conscious of that responsibility. And the act of architecture is about also belonging in a way, anchoring and rooting one's belonging to the land and creating porous spaces. It's going beyond, building boundaries. It's about creating moments of encounter between people. And this is a photo where, when we started construction of the building, all the, Estonians were just moving towards the site and celebrating that moment. On another front, like moving completely to another context, climate, and when we're working in Saudi Arabia, in Alula, in places where we have this heritage of earth construction and building contemporary art museum, my question as an architect is, what does it mean actually a contemporary art museum in that context? What do actually people think about a contemporary art museum? And here I become more like a person and an ethnographer in a way, or a social sociologue, where I go to the site and I meet people. I try to understand really the agriculture that is happening there. But also my first instinct was to go to schools and to meet the children and ask them, what is a contemporary museum for you? And start engaging with the with the imagination of what could be a contemporary museum.
You get more interesting answers from children than from
Very
adults?
amazing answers, because some of the children were saying it's a place where of the extraordinary. I found that so poetic. Of course, some others were like, this is a place for dinosaurs, like for the bones of dinosaurs. But you can find also a lot of imagination with children, and you can understand that museums are really essential places for for the community, and also for children, and for us as adults to become children again. And this is so precious. We have to stay in a way like children and be creative. Now,
can I ask you? You mentioned creating spaces that those who commissioned them did not ask for. So you're doing something on your own accord and adding value, let's say. What do you think? Actually, we had an interesting discussion with David Chipperfield recently at Design Doha Forum, and he stated his view was that many architects are complicit with the developers whose main goal is to make profit. And what you're saying, and also what Joep was describing in his work, is the opposite. You're talking about a certain power that architects have to change things. Mm-hmm. So what do you think, to which extent, and this is a question maybe for everybody, to which extent are architects powerful, able to change things, and contribute to public good?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, in a way, we have the tools, we have the capacity to build narrative, and like the way we work in my studio is really research-based. So every time we're in a context, we try to understand the history, the place, the environment, and its physical matter, and bring complexity in architecture. And the fact that we're able to assess complexity is able to take all these parameters and somehow synthesize them into space. And the fact of also building a vision, building a narrative is so important. But I have to say also it's about partnership again, and this is where I can talk about this project, which is a project that we're working on in Tanger with Nawaf Foundation and Sheikh Hala Khalifa. And it's about really like understanding that city which has been built around cinema, but thinking about cinema as a vessel also, and production and art as a vessel to build a community and build a project for the youth and for people. And even the building systems of the project would also involve the community and build knowledge through architecture, through the material that we will use, go back to techniques that have been forgotten, bring them back into the architecture of the project. So it's a fine balance between us as having really the tools and being, as you suggested, Joep, like on the top of the pyramid. And I think it's a nice way to describe it, because we have a more ecosystemic approach to things. Our value system is not only financially driven, so somehow we try always to find the balance between all the different challenges of a project. So it is between that and between really having the partnerships with the clients and with the whole team that we constantly orchestrate, made of engineers, of economists, of like the people, the users of the project.
We're running out of time. I have just one maybe quick question for Manuela, because I wanted to get to this. We're in Venice, it's Biennale. Can you tell us a little bit about how does Architectural Biennale present architecture? What is it about? What are the challenges? How does it communicate priorities, changing values, etc.?
Wow, this is a long topic. It will require another panel. But I'll try to be very quick. Basically, first of all, the Architecture Biennale was born in the 70s as part of the Art Biennale. So this is already, again, some connection with the Pritzker Prize. It's more related to the art, to architecture being seen as an art, rather than displaying architecture in a more sort of commercial or even technical way. And then from the 70s until now, it has developed through the vision of the curators, the different curators that have succeeded. And basically, to make an exhibition on architecture is already a paradox. I mean, how can you exhibit architecture? How can you render the experience of a space, of a context, of a social context, of all what a building is changing, basically, with its presence? So it is already very difficult. So in a way, I can see the evolution of the Architecture Biennale in two ways: understanding and proposing new ways of exhibiting architecture. And so from models, technical drawings, to videos, images, photos, VR, AR, and all the new media, to try to render this experience. And then, on the other hand, and parallel to that, is also how to express those values that are behind a project, a specific project or a specific building. And this has been done through the curatorial visions of the many curators until now, through different lenses, so interpreting the society. And from the point of view, this is the third lens, is the point of view of the institution, through the, let's say, the guidance of the institution through the different presidencies, is also, from my point of view, to use the Architecture Biennale to develop more awareness. This is, again, something that I can see applies very well also to the Pritzker Prize, to all what has to deal with architecture in our society. How to develop more awareness in the public, how to make people understand that, again, we are the clients. It's a privilege, it's a responsibility, but we have to be aware of what we demand and how we can influence the outcome of all this.
Thank you. That's very succinctly put. A very big mission.
In a way, I would say that, I don't know if you agree, but architecture for me is more a tool, and culture and education is the real cure.
Yes.
So it should be more and more open for everybody to participate in the discussion, the partnership.
Definitely. And I think like building an architecture culture, you know, sometimes you get always those moments where someone discovers your profession as an architect and think you're just, you know, like destined for a certain elite, and you're not, you're building, you know, 5% of our built environment. And that's really something that we have to fight. You know, we have to make an architecture culture and allow architecture to be like to the understanding of how essential actually architecture. We're surrounded with architecture. It fashions the way we relate to one another, and it changes also our relation to nature, to the living environment. So it's a great vessel for change and for building societies.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for our audience. A little bit.
Thank you.